I have talked for long about sim racing being okay in a budget. This is still true today. Entry-level equipment has been for a while competent, long-lasting, has features or capability that serves the most. If anything, budget sim racing has never been better. But today's video isn't really about entry-level equipment, nor really about upgrades. It's more about an idea when buying sim racing equipment, or in any hobby, called buy once, cry once. I'm not going to say here that you should buy the most expensive thing or find or spend extra for the sake of it, but I want you to get a mentality of having the least steps possible between any entry-level equipment to a place where everything in your sim rig is built to last and there's really no reason to commit extra funds for any significant changes. If you want to really commit to something, commit to subscribing to the channel. Thank you. Anyways, the concept of buy once, cry once is one of intentional frugality. It encapsulates the idea that investing in a higher quality, often more expensive product upfront can save you money, time, and frustration in the long run. Also, this video is really not about shaming your choices or even lower-end equipment because, as we all have seen, the Logitech G29 has the longevity of a Toyota Corolla, so it definitely fits this description in some contexts. Higher quality products typically last longer, meaning you won't have to replace them as often. While the initial cost might be higher, the total cost of ownership over time is often lower, or at least it will give you less headaches and also more possibilities. For example, a really good set of pedals is definitely a big buy, but it could last you years longer, saving you the cost of multiple replacements or jumping around between sets trying to find a way around downsides that cheaper sets could have. Quality products often require less maintenance and are less likely to break down. This not only saves money on repair costs, but also reduces the hassle and inconvenience of dealing with frequent issues. A good direct drive, for example, should last you many years. Even if the more advanced options appear, the jump in quality oftentimes is really not worth it, as what you have still serves perfectly fine and the performance is still extremely good. I know it's really easy to talk about this because I get a lot of stuff to review and I have a bunch of equipment to choose from. I can build the rig however I want, but this is also speaking from experience that is not always related to sim racing as a hobby, but applies to sim racing as a hobby nonetheless. Better products often offer superior performance, greater comfort, better functionality, more features, greater compatibility, and so on. So what does this really mean in practice? Well, it means spend more in some cases or spend less in other cases, and we'll talk about this in just a second. In essence, spend your money using your head instead of spending it using it on a whim or because you saw some cool thing on the internet. Spending money without much thought behind it, it's not something good, so investigate and understand what you're getting yourself into and what it means to spend your money and your time in sim racing. So let's start this with an example at one end of the spectrum, which is going way too cheap. In our hobby specifically, it could be a wheelbase that doesn't even have force feedback or a wheel stand that is so wobbly that might as well we just use the desk and that thing is going to the trash. In this case, the perception of sim racing can be deformed through the lens of equipment so cheap, it's unlikely to give any satisfaction to the user to the point they can think sim racing or any sim racing adjacent activities suck. So in this case, the buy once, cry once could be something a little more expensive that has better reviews, likely more usability and so on. Crucially here, investigating what to get and why to get it is important. Money doesn't grow on trees, and that cheap of a wheel or equipment may really become the reason why buy once, cry once is true. Because if you spend those 80 bucks on a bungee cord you see at Amazon, spending probably the extra amount would probably land you something that would last for years instead of a day, and this is actually a true story. However, for those of you with extra money to spend, there is such a thing as the other side of a spectrum, and that also needs a word or two. There's this Reddit thread we can use as a cautionary tale. Please don't see this as an opportunity to attack or ridicule this person because this user really doesn't deserve it. We have all made such decisions in the past for one reason or the other, and I've really done that with a car before, so, let's use this as a learning experience for all the community. So this user documents his experience of coming into sim racing as a complete newcomer, bought a rig with really good equipment that even myself would like to have, with zero or close to zero experience in sim racing, either that being in titles, building, understanding, or what is really needed out of a racer. There's a lot of time invested into this build. It took about 2 weeks with a couple of hours every other day. Then gets a couple of games on sale, Automobilista 2 and Assetto Corsa Competizione. But after some time trying it out, because nothing was going in the correct way, this user panics as the buyer's regrets steps in. It was basically too much of a leap. He goes on to say, when I get into something, it's really hard for me to stop. I dive into researching, reading, watching reviews, and eventually I will buy the best I can afford. In my mindset, I am afraid that I'm missing out something with cheaper equipment. I prefer to start with the best so I won't find myself looking for upgrades or blaming the gear for my mistakes. It's also really important for me to mention that I did not expect to be better in any way by buying the more expensive gear. Thankfully, the community was supportive and he ended up getting in the right direction for the experience he wanted to take out from sim racing. Though it must be said that even though this had more or less of a good finish, it could very well gone in the wrong direction of overspending, and then the expenditure doesn't really match what you think you're going to extract from the hobby. Also, one point I want to push here, because I say this all the time, cheaper equipment doesn't mean that much, at least not by itself. After a while, the jump in price is a lot and the return on that is negligible in terms of performance, and even sometimes it can be a detriment to performance. Pedals are something that come to mind, but for that there is a topic for another video, so sub to keep up to date. So really, don't ever think if you jump from a 12 to a 20 Newton meter direct drive you're going to miss out on a lot, because generally you don't. And even from lower ends direct drives into bigger ends direct drives, the jump might be a lot in terms of torque, but most of the experience is already there. However, the point is, in this case, it's important as a newcomer to jump into sim racing with a decent enough equipment list, but something you can test the waters with and then flip the equipment if you think the hobby is for you, or likewise, if you don't think the hobby is for you, it's something you can quickly sell. Something that is as easy to set up as it is easy to get rid of. So there's many choices right now in budget equipment, and sim racing budget stuff is actually pretty good. I've been in gaming for quite a while, over 30 years now, and I would say that sim racing as a hobby within the gaming niche, it is really not the same as going into an FPS or a MOBA or something like that, because sim racing as something casual is more of a commitment than any other games you'll ever play. And it is better to start low with a good quality entry-level type of equipment and then build from there, instead of spending lots of money and time and then to figure out you don't really like the stuff you're getting yourself into. So buy once, cry once should be renamed to something like buy once, but you should investigate and contextualize what is wanted, what is needed, make sure you allocate the correct amount of resources needed for the current situation to a point where those resources matches the expectations. Cry once. But that's way too big of a saying. That sounds more like something coming out of an advert for medication or something like that. But I want to hear from you what you think about this specific topic. Don't forget to press like and subscribe to help the channel out.